11 powdered milk brands to avoid, and the 2 that are worth it. Oxidized cholesterol, hidden vegetable oils, and trace heavy metals just turned up in some of America's most trusted powdered milk brands. The boxes sitting in pantries from coast to coast, the ones marketed as wholesome, shelf-stable, and family-safe, tell a very different story under a microscope. But scoop the wrong powder into your cup, and what you're really mixing is oxidized milk fat, advanced glycation end products, and added sugar disguised as nutrition. If this has been your go-to brand for 10, 20, even 30 years, everything we've found has been quietly building up in your system that entire time. Today, we're breaking down 11 powdered milk brands that failed safety testing, including 2 most people consider premium, plus the 2 brands that actually tested clean. Coming in at number 11, Peak Full Cream Milk Powder. That tall green and white tin sitting on the international aisle, the one with the European farmhouse imagery, the brand whispered about in ethnic grocery stores as the rich, creamy import that's worth the extra money. Peak built its American reputation on looking premium, looking imported, looking like the powdered milk Europeans actually drink. Then the FDA import alerts started piling up. Inconsistent labeling on fat content, undisclosed vegetable oils blended into product marketed as full cream dairy. The front of that tin promises one thing. The lab analysis tells another story entirely. Peak's full cream version contains significantly more saturated fat than the packaging suggests, with imported batches repeatedly flagged for hidden vegetable oil additives that shouldn't be in real dairy at all. Open a fresh tin. That sweet, almost waxy aroma, heavier than fresh milk should smell. That's saturated fat coating the powder, oxidizing in storage, slowly turning into compounds your arteries don't want anywhere near them. Stir it into hot coffee and watch it dissolve too smoothly, too creamy, too perfect. Real whole milk powder doesn't behave like that. Vegetable oil blends do. For families using powdered milk every morning to stretch the budget, or anyone managing cholesterol on daily statin medication, that hidden saturated fat load is doing exactly the opposite of what you think. It's quietly pushing LDL higher with every cup. The label says European quality. The lab says reformulated commodity dairy with cheap oil filler. Premium price, cheap shortcuts, hidden fat. Welcome to imported. The next brand on this list might be the most familiar powdered milk name in any American grocery store, and what's hiding inside the standard formula is going to surprise you. At number 10, Nestle Nido. The bright red can with a smiling child, stacked high in Hispanic grocery aisles, big box warehouses, and corner stores from Texas to New York. Nido is the powdered milk millions of American families pour into baby bottles, breakfast cereal, and afternoon coffee, trusting the Nestle name the way their parents and grandparents did. That trust is exactly what the company is counting on. The standard Nido Fortificata is whole milk powder with high saturated fat content, and certain variants quietly include added sugar that doesn't show up in the marketing. Then there's the parent company. Nestle has faced repeated global scrutiny over heavy metal findings in its dairy and infant nutrition products, with U.S. testing of imported milk powders occasionally flagging trace contaminants that should never appear in food sold to children or adults. Open a fresh can. That overly sweet, almost candy-like smell rising up. That's not what real whole milk powder is supposed to smell like. That's added sugar plus fortified vitamins masking the taste of long-storage commodity dairy. Mix it with water and watch how it foams. Watch how thick it goes. That density is sugar and saturated fat doing the work, not protein. For families using Nido daily to stretch the grocery budget, or anyone managing prediabetes, type 2 diabetes, or high blood pressure, this combination hits hard and hits fast. High saturated fat, added sugar, trace contaminant risk. 3 direct hits to triglycerides, blood pressure, and glucose control in a single scoop. The smiling child on the can. The decades of family trust. The hidden sugar load Nestle doesn't want to discuss. 3 generations of families. 3 generations of contradiction. From a brand promising nutrition while selling a product that undermines the very prescriptions millions depend on. If a globally trusted brand is hiding sugar in its standard formula, Surely the clean dairy farm imports from countries we associate with grass-fed milk are better. Think again. Now at number 9, Anchor Full Cream Milk Powder. The blue and white tin with the New Zealand pastoral imagery, the rolling green hills, the grass-fed cows. Anchor is what shoppers reach for when they want imported quality, when they associate New Zealand with clean, natural, premium dairy. The marketing works perfectly. The reality is something else. Anchor's full cream powder runs roughly 26 to 28% milk fat, and independent reviews have repeatedly noted that imported dairy powders sometimes arrive past peak freshness, with oxidized milk fat producing dangerous compounds called oxysterols. Oxidized cholesterol isn't just stale dairy. It's a category of compounds directly linked to arterial inflammation, plaque formation, and cardiovascular damage. Open an older tin, and you can almost smell it. That faint cardboard, slightly metallic note underneath the dairy aroma. That's the milk fat oxidizing, breaking down, turning into the very compounds that strain your arteries. Stir it into hot tea and watch a thin, oily film rise to the surface. Real, fresh, whole milk powder shouldn't separate like that. Oxidized fat does. The grass-fed marketing is real. So is the long shipping journey from New Zealand to American shelves, sometimes sitting in warehouses for months before it ever reaches a kitchen. By the time you open it, the protective qualities are gone. What's left is high-fat dairy that has chemically degraded into something your cardiovascular system actively works against. For families serving this in lattes and cereal, or anyone already on heart medication, those oxysterols feed straight into the inflammation pathway driving heart disease and stroke. Grass-fed cows, oxidized cholesterol. Premium price, premium damage. The clean image survived the shipping, the milk fat didn't. If a premium imported brand can't be trusted, surely the wholesome health food store brands stocked next to organic granola are safer. Wrong again. At number 8, Bob's Red Mill Non-Fat Dry Milk. The craft paper bag with a smiling old man on the front. The brand built on whole grains, traditional methods, and a health food store reputation that practically guarantees clean. Shoppers throw Bob's Red Mill into the cart on autopilot, assuming every product on the shelf is minimally processed and wholesome. The non-fat dry milk doesn't deserve that benefit of the doubt. This is still a commodity non-fat dry milk. That means it goes through high-heat spray drying, the same aggressive industrial process that creates oxidized cholesterol and advanced glycation end products in every batch. The brand does not publish third-party heavy metal testing for this specific product, which means there's no independent verification of what's actually inside. Open the bag. That ultra-fine, chalky texture. The faintly burnt, slightly sweet smell underneath. That cooked aroma isn't tradition. It's the high-heat damage signature, the chemical fingerprint of milk proteins fused with sugars at extreme temperatures. Those bonds are the AGEs, advanced glycation end products, and they don't leave your body easily. They accumulate in tissues, in arteries, in kidneys. Stir it into water. Watch how slowly it dissolves. Watch the slight grit at the bottom of the cup. That's heat-damaged protein refusing to fully integrate, exactly the way it behaves inside your bloodstream. AGEs and oxidized cholesterol have been tied directly to kidney stress, accelerated arterial stiffening, and the slow, silent damage driving heart disease and chronic kidney disease in older Americans. For anyone managing hypertension or already showing signs of reduced kidney function, this innocent-looking bag is feeding the exact biological process you're trying to slow down. Wholesome packaging, industrial process, same damage. The smiling face on the front, the chemistry inside the bag. Welcome to health food. The next product on this list isn't even technically milk, and the company selling it has been sued for saying it is. Number 7 on this list is Augustin Farms Morning Moo's Low-Fat Milk Alternative. Marketed aggressively to preppers, emergency pantry buyers, and anyone building long-term food storage, Morning Moo's promises shelf-stable, wholesome milk lasting up to 10 years in your basement. The big yellow can, the barn imagery, the reassuring word milk on the label. Here's the catch. It's not milk. Morning Moose is a blend of whey, sweet dairy whey, added sugar, and vegetable oil. The company has faced consumer complaints and lawsuits over misleading milk labeling and protein content that falls dramatically short of real dry milk. Buyers thought they were stocking actual nutrition for emergencies. They were stocking sweetened powdered whey with cheap oil instead. Open the can. That overly sweet, almost cake mix aroma rising up. Real powdered milk doesn't smell like that. Sugar and refined vegetable oil do. Mix it with water and watch how easily it foams, how unnaturally smooth it goes, how strangely yellow the result looks. Compare it side by side with real reconstituted milk, and the difference is undeniable. One is dairy, the other is dessert powder pretending. The added sugar load and sodium content make this a quiet disaster for anyone managing diabetes, hypertension, or chronic kidney disease, where every gram of added sugar and every milligram of sodium directly affects the medications keeping conditions stable. People stockpile this thinking they're protecting their family's health in an emergency. They're stockpiling something that would make their existing health problems worse the moment they had to rely on it. The 10-year shelf life is real. The milk is fiction. 10-year shelf life. 0-day milk. The very preppers who buy this to safeguard their families are loading their pantries with a product engineered for storage, not nutrition. If a brand can sell sweetened whey as milk for a decade without consequence, the legacy baking aisle brands have to be cleaner, right? Don't count on it. At number 6, Saco Cultured Buttermilk Blend. The familiar yellow box that's been sitting in nearly every American baking aisle for decades. The convenient buttermilk substitute that home bakers, mothers, and grandmothers have trusted for biscuits, pancakes, and cornbread without ever questioning what's inside. Pull a Saco box off the shelf and read the ingredients carefully. This isn't simple cultured buttermilk dried into a powder. It's a heavily processed blend of sweet dairy whey, cultured buttermilk solids, and salt, with sodium content that climbs surprisingly high per serving. The powder undergoes the same high-heat spray drying that generates advanced glycation end products in commodity, non-fat dry milk. Open the box. Almost sour aroma cut with a sharp salt note. That sodium punch isn't subtle. It's structural. Saco's formula leans on salt to mimic the mouthfeel and tang of real cultured buttermilk because the actual cultured component is diluted by cheaper whey. Bake with it, and the sodium ends up baked into every biscuit, every pancake, every batch of cornbread you serve at family dinners. For families baking weekly comfort foods with this, or anyone watching blood pressure, managing heart failure, or trying to stay within strict sodium limits prescribed by a cardiologist, the hidden sodium stacks up shockingly fast. A single serving feels harmless. A weekly habit over years undermines medication-controlled blood pressure targets the way few hidden ingredients can. Plus, the AGEs from high-heat processing add to the cumulative damage, putting extra stress on aging kidneys already working harder than they used to. The yellow box looks like home. The sodium load looks like the cardiology ward. Convenience cooking, cardiac consequences. Decades of trust earned, decades of sodium hidden. If you're finding this video useful and you want to keep your family safer at the grocery store, hit subscribe. It's free, and you'll never miss these exposés. The next brand sells itself as the small batch American alternative to mass-market dairy. The truth is much messier. Number 5 is one most people trust without question. Hoosier Hill Farm All-American Dairy Whole Milk Powder. The brown bag with rustic typography. The small batch story. The American heartland imagery wrapped around a product positioned as the artisanal alternative to mass-market commodity dairy. Indiana farmers. Family operation. Wholesome Midwestern values. That's the marketing. Here's the reality. Hoosier Hill Farm is a repackager, not a producer. They source commodity dairy powder from the same industrial supply chain feeding every other brand on this list, then package it under their own label with Heartland branding stamped on the front. Customer reviews repeatedly mention rancid, off-tasting batches the kind of complaints consistent with oxidized milk fat that is degraded long before reaching the kitchen. Open one of those bags. That stale, slightly cardboard-like smell, the way the powder clumps in unnatural lumps, the faint metallic aftertaste when you stir it into hot coffee. Those aren't artisanal quirks. Those are the sensory signatures of milk fat that has gone rancid in storage, breaking down into oxysterols and oxidized lipids that travel straight from your cup into your bloodstream. Rancid dairy fat doesn't just taste bad. It actively contributes to inflammation, oxidative stress on blood vessels, and worsening cholesterol profiles in adults already taking medications to keep those numbers under control. For families using this every morning, or anyone on statins or blood pressure medication trusting a small batch label to deliver something cleaner than the big brands, the lab tells a brutally simple story. Same commodity dairy, worse storage, more oxidation, higher inflammation load delivered with rural charm and a price markup. American flag, industrial supply chain, rancid result. Heartland branding, big box dairy, same damage. The next brand is one your grandmother probably used. And what's in that red and white box has barely changed in 50 years. We're not done. Coming up are some of the most recognizable names in American dairy history. Names your grandmother trusted. Names your parents grew up on. And the lab results on what's actually inside those classic boxes will change the way you think about every recipe they're in. Number 4. Carnation Instant Non-Fat Dry Milk. The red and white box has been sitting on American grocery shelves for nearly a century. Generations of families have stirred it into hot chocolate, cake batter, casseroles, and cereal, trusting the recognizable label without ever asking what changed inside the box over the decades. The branding stayed the same. The processing got worse. Carnation Instant Non-Fat Dry Milk is a high-heat, spray-dried commodity powder, and that aggressive heat processing is loaded with consequences. Oxidized cholesterol forms in every batch. Advanced glycation end products bond into the protein. The entire chemical structure of the milk transforms into something your body recognizes as inflammation rather than nutrition. Nestle, Carnation's parent company, has dealt with multiple recalls and regulatory issues across its dairy and nutrition portfolio, raising serious questions about quality control standards for a product that ends up in baby formulas, school lunches, and senior nutrition programs across the country. Open that red and white box. That faintly cooked, slightly burnt aroma rising up. That's the heat damage signature. Mix it into water. Watch the strange yellow tint, the way it never quite tastes like fresh milk, no matter how much you stir. Research has directly linked oxidized cholesterol in non-fat dry milk to atherosclerosis progression, the slow narrowing and hardening of arteries that drives heart attacks and strokes. For families serving this at breakfast, or anyone already managing coronary artery disease, high cholesterol, or recovering from a cardiac event, every cup is feeding the exact disease process the medication is fighting against. Decades of brand loyalty, decades of damaged dairy. The red and white box looks like nostalgia. The lab results look like cardiac risk. A century of trust, a century of heat damage. The recognizable name, the unrecognizable chemistry. The label hasn't changed. The science finally caught up. The FDA has known about heat processing damage in commodity dry milk for years. They've also looked the other way on the next brand on this list. And what's in that ultra-cheap private label box should never be in food. At number 3, Country Cream Instant Non-Fat Dry Milk, and the entire category of ultra-cheap private label non-fat dry milks sold through discount and warehouse channels. The plain packaging. The promise of saving money. The marketing pitch that whispers, same as the name brands for less. Families on fixed incomes, retirees stretching every dollar, parents feeding multiple kids on tight budgets. These are the shoppers leaning hardest on these powders. They're also the shoppers least protected from what's inside. These ultra-low-cost, non-fat dry milks come from the most aggressive spray drying processes with the thinnest quality control margins in the industry. FDA inspection records of low-cost dairy processors have shown a recurring pattern of sanitation citations, salmonella concerns, and improper holding temperatures, with some facilities repeatedly flagged for the same violations year after year without meaningful enforcement. Open a discount bag. That faintly off, almost dusty aroma, the slightly gray-yellow tint when you mix it with water, the strange aftertaste that lingers. Those are the sensory red flags of a product that has been pushed through industrial drying with minimal oversight, sometimes sitting in warehouses next to facilities that have failed multiple inspections. Contamination risk, plus oxidized cholesterol, plus AGEs, adds up to a category that's particularly dangerous for immunocompromised adults, anyone on blood pressure or diabetes medications, and families where any GI illness can trigger dangerous interactions with daily prescriptions. A single salmonella exposure in someone managing chronic conditions isn't a stomach bug, it's a hospital admission. And the people who can least afford that hospital bill are the exact people this product is marketed to. Saving $2 at checkout, risking a $1,000 ER visit. Discount prices, hospital-grade risk. The lowest cost per ounce, the highest cost per consequence. The system that should be inspecting these facilities knows. They issue the citations, they watch the violations repeat. Nothing meaningful changes. Check your pantry, seriously, because the next brand markets itself as the better-tasting alternative to bland skim, and what they did to make it taste better is genuinely worse. Number 2. Milkman Instant Low-Fat Dry Milk. Sold as the better-tasting dry milk for shoppers who hate the watery, thin flavor of skim, the marketing promise is simple. We add a little cream powder back in. The result tastes more like real milk. Families and older adults who never liked traditional powdered milk pick Milkman, thinking they finally found one that tastes right. They didn't. Adding cream powder back into an already heat-processed, non-fat base doesn't fix anything. It compounds the damage. The cream powder itself goes through its own high-heat spray-drying cycle, generating its own oxidized cholesterol load, then gets blended into a base that's already oxidized. 2 heat-damaged dairy powders combined into 1 cup. The brand provides no published third-party testing data on heavy metals, AGE levels, or oxysterol content, leaving consumers completely in the dark about what they're actually drinking. Open a Milkman box. That noticeably richer, creamier aroma. Yes, it tastes better than commodity skim powder. That's exactly the problem. The mouthfeel that makes it palatable comes from added oxidized milk fat doing exactly what oxidized milk fat does inside the human body. Stir it into coffee. Watch how it goes thick and silky in a way non-fat shouldn't. That smoothness is fat that is chemically degraded, layered onto protein that has been heat damaged. For anyone over 50 drinking this regularly, especially anyone on cholesterol medication, blood pressure prescriptions, or managing kidney function, doubling down on oxidized milk fat is a direct accelerant for arterial plaque buildup, kidney stress, and rising LDL numbers. The very protective effect your medication is supposed to deliver gets quietly undermined every morning. Better taste, worse chemistry. The cream powder fix isn't a fix, it's a multiplier. They didn't solve the problem, they doubled it. The taste went up. So did the damage. The number 1 spot goes to a brand with one of the most notorious corporate scandals in modern food history, and the powdered milk products are still sitting on American shelves. Just one more to go. The number 1 brand on this list is connected to one of the largest food fraud cases in modern history. The accounting scandal made global headlines. What it did to the dairy supply chain has barely been discussed at all, and it's still in American grocery stores. At number 1, Parmalat Instant Dry Milk, and the broader category of long shelf-stable imported powdered milks sold under the Parmalat name. The globally recognized branding. The aggressive marketing toward American shoppers who love the idea of dairy that lasts forever in the pantry. The promise of convenience, wrapped in international credibility. Here's what most American shoppers don't know. Parmalat's parent company has one of the most documented food fraud and accounting scandal histories in modern corporate memory, a multi-billion-dollar collapse that became one of the largest financial frauds ever uncovered. That same corporate culture has been tied to multiple international quality concerns in the dairy supply chain, including contamination findings, mislabeling allegations, and ongoing scrutiny over how its products are sourced and priced. The ultra-long shelf life that makes Parmalat so appealing isn't natural. It's achieved through aggressive, ultra-high temperature processing combined with spray drying, the kind of double heat exposure that maximizes oxidized cholesterol, drives AGE formation through the roof, and leaves the final powder chemically transformed into something your cardiovascular system treats as a threat. Open a Parmalat package, that stale, slightly metallic aroma, the way the powder feels almost too dry, too processed, too far removed from anything that came from a cow. Mix it into water. Watch the strange, off-white color, the unnatural smoothness, the aftertaste that doesn't fade. Those are the fingerprints of dairy that has been heated, dried, heated again, and packaged for a shelf life that real food was never meant to have. For anyone over 50 drinking this, especially anyone managing high blood pressure, taking heart medication, or with reduced kidney function, this is the worst-case combination on this entire list. Heavy oxidation, untrustworthy quality history, elevated sodium in some variants, maximum AGE load. Every cardiovascular and kidney risk factor stacked into a single product wrapped in international branding. Eternal shelf life, eternal damage. The accounting scandal made the news. The dairy damage didn't. What's the worst powdered milk you've ever opened? Drop it in the comments below. Let's see how many of us have been buying these without knowing. 11 brands exposed. From Peak's hidden vegetable oils to Parmalat's scandal-tied supply chain with oxidized cholesterol, AGEs, contamination risk, hidden sugar, and sodium overload sitting in pantries across America. But 2 brands prove powdered milk can still be done right. Safe pick 1. Organic Valley Non-Fat Dry Milk. Finally, a powdered milk that doesn't need to hide what's inside. Organic Valley is a U.S. farmer-owned cooperative, not a faceless commodity processor, and that ownership structure changes everything about how the product gets made. Every batch comes from certified USDA organic pasture-raised cows. No synthetic hormones, no routine antibiotics, no GMO feed. The brand carries full USDA organic certification, publishes its sourcing standards openly, and uses lower temperature processing than the aggressive industrial spray drying that defines almost every commodity brand we just exposed. Open a carton of Organic Valley non-fat dry milk. That clean, slightly sweet, genuinely dairy aroma. Not cooked, not burnt, not metallic. The powder itself is finer, paler, more uniform. None of the strange yellowing or clumping that signals heat damage. Mix it with cold water. Watch how it dissolves smoothly without that telltale chalky residue at the bottom of the cup. Taste it. It tastes like milk because it actually is milk, processed gently enough that the proteins, fats, and minerals haven't been chemically transformed into inflammation triggers. The lower temperature processing matters more than most shoppers realize. It significantly reduces oxidized cholesterol formation. It dramatically cuts the AGE load. It preserves the actual nutritional value of the dairy instead of cooking it into something the body has to work overtime to manage. For adults over 50 managing cardiovascular health, kidney function, blood pressure, or any combination of medications working to keep those numbers stable, this is the rare powdered milk that supports your goals instead of quietly working against them. The certifications are real. The sourcing is transparent. The processing is gentler. The price is higher than commodity brands. You're paying a few dollars more for a product that won't undermine your prescriptions. That math works. Safe pick 2. Now Foods Organic Non-Fat Dry Milk. For shoppers who want verification, not just marketing, Now Foods sets a standard the rest of the dry milk category can't touch. Now Foods has been a long-standing American supplement and natural foods company for decades. and they bring the same testing rigor to their organic, non-fat dry milk that they apply to their supplement line. Every batch is sourced from American organic dairies. Every batch is tested in their own in-house laboratories for purity, heavy metal contamination, and microbial safety. The product carries USDA organic certification. The company will publish a certificate of analysis on request, an actual document showing what the lab found, not a press release pretending they tested it. Now Foods operates GMP-certified, FDA-registered facilities, a level of verifiable transparency almost unheard of anywhere else in the powdered milk category. Open the resealable bag. That clean, fresh dairy aroma. The powder is uniformly fine, properly dry, free of the cardboard staleness that signals oxidation. Mix it into a glass of cold water. The reconstituted milk tastes clean, slightly sweet, with no off flavors, no cooked aftertaste, no metallic tang. The verified absence of heavy metals, hormones, and antibiotic residues, combined with organic sourcing and rigorous in-house testing, makes this one of the very few powdered milks that supports cardiovascular health, kidney function, and overall medication compatibility, instead of slowly undermining them. For households where someone is managing high blood pressure, monitoring kidney numbers with their doctor, or taking daily statins to keep cholesterol in line, this is the powder that doesn't fight your prescriptions. It costs more than commodity brands. It costs less than a single ER visit caused by a contaminated alternative. Real testing, real transparency, real dairy. 11 brands exposed, 2 worth keeping. Subscribe now, and if you're watching on TV, tap your remote so you never get blindsided again.